Hi guys, so today's video is going to be kind of just a very casual, chatty life update, an update on my situation and my dad's health. I did a little vlog a little while back and I kind of went over the fact that my life has changed a lot recently as my father has had some health things going on, and because of this my husband and I decided to move in with him to help him. I know a lot of people have been a little confused, wondering, am I permanently moving in? Is this a temporary thing? Are we selling our house? What's going on with all of that? And then also, I feel like while I have sat down and filmed since my dad had his surgery, which I'll give all the details. This is going to be very rambly, but I have sat down and filmed since then and edited and posted those videos, but it feels like I haven't really filmed much because before my dad came home from the hospital, I pre-recorded something like, I don't know, 10 or more videos. I kind of lost track because I just recorded so much, but since then, I haven't really felt like I've had the chance to sit down and update you. I've managed to do a few things here and there, but I haven't really been able to fill you in, and things have been changing from day to day, week to week, a lot. A lot has gone down, so I thought I'd fill you in. It's probably more than anybody cares to know, but I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of having a pity party, and maybe I just need to see a lot of hearts, heart emojis in the comment section or something. I don't know. I'm needy right now. So, life update vlog, I'll kind of recap what I said in that video, which was just that we moved into my dad's house. No, we're not really planning on moving back into our house. In fact, fun fact, this worked out really well. My friend, Jashana, who has her own channel, I mention her, I feel like, a fair amount. And we are actually very, very, very close friends. I talk to her basically every single day, and we use the Voxer app. So when I say talk, I mean I leave her like really long messages, voice messages all the time, and we're constantly going back and forth. I talk to her all the time, and we're really, really good friends. And Sean, my husband, and myself, we knew with everything going on in the world right now that now was not a great time to try and get the house ready to sell, but we're like, it's not like my dad's charging us rent or anything. We'll just pay our mortgage like we normally would, and then when the market turns around and, you know, the health crisis is a little different, then maybe we can try to sell our house. But my friend, she had her lease coming to an end at the end of June, and I was like, hey, so if you guys don't do it as a favor to us, but if you legitimately need a place to stay, you can just stay at our place. You can just rent our place. And that did end up working out really well for her and her boyfriend. So that's kind of the situation with our house. That's not the most important thing, but you know, it's the little things. You got to be grateful for the little stuff. And it's not little. It's a huge deal. I'm very grateful that turned out the way it did. It was a huge relief. I don't want to speak on their behalf, but as of right now, their plan is to rent it for a little while and then maybe look in the future, because same reason that it's difficult for us to consider selling our house right now, same thing with them looking for a place. So they're gonna rent our place for a while and then maybe later on down the road look for somewhere else. But like I said, I don't want to speak for them. That's obviously their personal stuff, but we both chatted with each other because we're like, we both have channels and we're both, you know, like we've made it clear that we're friends, and her living situation, she's pretty open about I'm moving and things like that. So we figured that it might come up, or like maybe it would look familiar or something. I mean, her shelves are different. You guys, I don't know if anybody would have noticed, but anyway, so she's cool with it. I didn't just give you all this information that she didn't want known. That's the update with our house situation. My husband and I are living with my dad. The plan is to continue to live with him and probably keep living with him. I'm very glad that we made that decision because initially, to recap what I mentioned in the life update vlog, is that for a couple weeks they thought he had pneumonia because he wasn't breathing very well. I have a hair stuck to my face. I knew this was going to be rambly and a hot mess. Literally, it's so hot in this room. They thought he had pneumonia for about 2 weeks, and they gave him an antibiotic the first week, didn't get rid of it, gave him an antibiotic second time, didn't get rid of it. I was already going to be coming out to his house because I'd been doing his grocery shopping for him because I didn't want him going out and about with everything going on in the world because he is older. So I had been doing his grocery shopping, my husband and we came over to bring him his groceries and to visit with him and see how he was doing. This was at the end of his second week of antibiotics, and he was like, I still don't really feel good. So I was like, all right, well, let's just pop in to urgent care. Very nice doctor at urgent care was like, you need to take him to the hospital. And so I took him to the hospital. He was there for a few days, and they're like, yeah, there's fluid in his lungs and all sorts of other stuff. So they were thinking that he might need some kind of surgery, but they told him, you're welcome to check with your cardiologist and get a second opinion. And he was like, okay, which I feel like is fair to want a second opinion. It's kind of a big deal to have heart surgery. So he was there for a couple days, and then we made an appointment for the cardiologist. We took him to the cardiologist. They told him, everything looks amazing. We'll see you later. And so we were like, great. Oh, that's wonderful news. We were thinking we were in the clear. No big deal. And then 2 days later, he had been sleeping and he woke up not hardly being able to breathe, drenched in sweat. And when I came out that morning, he was sitting in his recliner, his chair, Dad's chair. He was sitting there like really visibly having a difficult time breathing. I'm like, I don't think this is normal. So I called a couple people and they were like, yeah, you should take him to the hospital. So I took him to the hospital, and then he was there for 17 days. For those that don't know, my dad is old. He's 73. He's quite old to have a daughter my age because I'm 27. And one thing about my dad is that everybody has always been shocked when I tell them how old my dad is, because my dad is the kind of person that wakes up and he goes and he does yard work, and then he's like, I feel like painting something in my house. And so he'll just like paint a room, or he'll do something, he'll build something. He's just one of those people that always keeps himself busy. He was always really active. He would go for 1 to 2 mile walks every day. He would lift weights. He was doing amazing. People were always shocked that my dad was the age he was. And even with not really feeling well for about a month, he was still doing well as far as physically getting around and everything like that. Then I took him to the hospital. I don't know what's going on at this point. It is a little difficult to see a loved one just sitting there having difficulty breathing. You're like, this isn't normal. That's a little difficult. And on top of that, because of everything going on in the world, health-wise, I could not see him once while he was in the hospital. For 17 days, I would have to, sometimes I would go a few days not even hearing from him and not getting a call, not knowing what was going on. And then when I would get a call from him, it was like, okay, what's going on? And then they were kind of slowly figuring things out until finally they're like, we're going to do surgery. We're going to do open heart surgery. This was a little bizarre because we had just taken him to the cardiologist and they're like, everything looks great. You're great. Everything's fine. And then all of a sudden he's been sick for months and needs heart surgery, and there's fluid in his lungs. There was 1.5 liters in one lung and 1 liter in the other. There was just all of a sudden, it's like, did he break? Suddenly everything is wrong. And so they told me that they would need to do heart surgery. Again, I don't get to visit him, and I'm just like, okay. And then he had his heart surgery, and man, that day, I have a lot of siblings. I have a lot of half siblings. I have one full blood sister and then a bunch of half siblings. We all had a group text, and that day I was like, everything went well when the doctor called, and all of my siblings were like, oh my gosh, I feel like that really cheesy line that somebody let out a breath they didn't know they were holding. I feel like that was all of my siblings collectively just finally being able to breathe. Now, I feel like a lot of times when there is something wrong and you have major surgery, of course it's expected that when your loved one comes home, it was a major surgery. It's going to take time to recover. So I knew that, and I was prepping myself. That's why I was like, I'm going to pre-record a bunch of videos, and I'm going to try to make the house look really nice. I wanted to surprise my dad, so we got a U-Haul and we set it all up so that when he came home, he would see like, look, Dad, we're here for you. We're here to stay, if you will. And I mean, he was wanting us to stay with him. It's not like we're like, move over, Dad, this is our house now. Anyway, though, I was just like, I'm gonna get really prepared so that when he comes home, I will be there for him. And I know I'm a fairly cheery person. I know how I come across, but I am very serious when it comes to the health of my loved ones and just my loved ones in general. I'm one of those people that I have always struggled to make friends, and I've never been very good at just going up and talking to people or anything like that. This partially stemmed from elements of my childhood. But anyway, I just, when I have a few people that I love very passionately, and I will do everything I can to make sure that those people are taken care of. I'm not an idiot, is basically what I'm saying. And I think there's this idea that very cheery, optimistic people, or people who try to be cheery and optimistic, are naive and stupid. And I'm not. I knew he would need help. So I wanted to get all of these things done ahead of time so that when he came home, I could be there for him. Of course, the heart surgery was major surgery, so after he had that, I still didn't get to see him for a bit because he was in recovery. And then I finally got the phone call, hey, your dad's ready to come home. And it was such a relief. I go to pick him up, and he is the skinniest I have ever seen him in his life. When he came out of the hospital, my dad used to be 6'1". He's like 6 foot now because he's old and he's, shrinking. My grandma always says, as she got older, she grew like a cow's tail closer and closer to the ground. So that's my dad right now, like a cow's tail. He is getting a little smaller, but he weighed 140 pounds coming out of the hospital. That's really skinny for somebody my dad's height. And it was a little alarming to pick him up and just, his arms are so thin. His shoulders are jutting out, his shoulder blades. I mean, this is a guy that just a little while ago, there was like, I took this silly video of him being like, ha, and flexing and stuff. All right, Dad, let's see those muscles. Now you gotta pull up your sleeve more than that so we can see. Very impressive. And can you state your age for us?
What?
Your age.
Can I tell you how old I am?
Yeah.
37.
Oh, sure.
73.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you've got all these weights.
See, and then I do this.
Now you're showing off. He's always been pretty muscular just from, his tools and working all the time and everything. So that was a little bit of a shocker. And I mean, he was obviously not going to be super mobile. It's not like he was going to be running marathons anytime soon or anything like that. But it was like, oh wow, I knew he was going to need my help, but it was like, wow, Dad's going to need some help. The first week home was difficult. He had so many medications, and the medications had some interesting side effects. On top of that, my dad was sleep deprived because being in the hospital for 17 days, even if you start to get some sleep, then they come in, they need to take your blood. Or now they suddenly got to take an x-ray. Or the machine starts beeping and it wakes you up. There's just always something. You don't sleep well usually when you're in a hospital. Maybe you do, I don't know. My dad is a light sleeper. Hardly slept, so he's sleep deprived. He's on 10 plus medications, and it has some effects on him. There was some interesting conversations, some of which, you just gotta laugh at because you're like, I don't know what you're talking about right now. Hallucinations and being disoriented and whatnot. So that was a little strange, but I'm like, well, I mean, I guess that's what we're dealing with right now. That eventually got better, which was a relief. After that, things were, getting a little better. He was starting to get his appetite back. He was starting to finally get some sleep. He was kind of getting to be closer to himself, which was good. I took him to one of his follow-up appointments. I'm obviously not going to give the name of this particular person or say even what specific kind of doctor they are, but I took him to one of the appointments, and they were like, oh, you need to take him to the hospital. And I was like, no, let me rephrase. This is what they said. They said, so you're the one that would take him to the hospital? And I was like, yeah. And then I was more polite than that, but I was like, just to check, are you saying you want me to take him to the hospital? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, what? So, their particular building was next to a hospital. It's one of those situations, if you guys have ever had to take somebody or have yourself had to go in, a lot of times medical buildings are all near each other. So I wanted to make sure when they're like, yeah, you need to take him. It's just, we can't do everything here. And I'm like, okay. And then they're like, we'll call in though. We'll let them know that he's coming. I was like, okay. And then I'm not even kidding. It was like that amount of information. When I first came in, they're like, whoa, his oxygen levels are really low. And then when I went to leave, they're like, this is what they did. They're like, okay, so it's just like right next door. And I was like, in this building? They're like, no, the building right next door. And I was like, can I get the exact address? And they're like, oh, I don't know it. And I just kind of like looked at them. They're like, let me get it for you. Because medical buildings, I've had instances where a couple years ago my dad was in a car accident and you have a building where there's different units and you take them inside one door and they're like, oh, actually it's this one. And so I was like, I'm going to be thorough. So I got the exact address and then we came down the elevator. I had my dad sit down and I'm like, I'm going to see what right next door looks like. It was not right next door. There was a whole other huge building. So I'm walking around this huge parking lot and then I discovered the exact building that we're supposed to take him to. And why I'm so frustrated at this point is because they saw his oxygen levels dip incredibly low just from walking to the parking lot to their building. And yet they're like, oh yeah, it's right next door. Like, I'm gonna, walk around with him trying to find this exact place that I need to take him into when they just saw that they had to put him on oxygen. They were so worried. So I'm like, I'm not really a fan of everything that's going on, but whatever, I'll just take him to the hospital and then I'll let them know that they said that, you know, they would call in and let them know what needed to be done. So I take him to the hospital. Different hospital, by the way, than the one he had his surgery at. I take him to the hospital and they're like, hi. And I tell them what's up. And then they're like, oh, well, he didn't call in, the doctor. And I was like thinking, maybe he just hasn't had a chance yet. So I was like, okay. And they're like, let me see this other part to see if he, you know, called him in for this area. And I was like, okay. And they're like, yeah, he didn't call that area either. So we'll go ahead and take him this part. They take him in. They're like, so why are you guys here today? And I'm like, I don't know. So I try to fill them in on like, well, he had heart surgery. And I'm like trying to give them the rundown of everything going on. And they're like, okay. And then the ER nurse was like, are you sure he sent you to this hospital? And I was very sure because I very much I checked that I got the exact right address. So I was like, yeah, I'm sure. And then the very nice ER doctor was like, it's just strange because that doctor doesn't really talk to us. And when we try to call, they just don't really give us any information. And I'm like, what? I thought that was unbelievable. And he never called. I'm starting to rant. Anyway, he never called. He never called in to let them know what my dad was why he even said before we left too, because I'm like, oh my gosh, is this an emergency? But he was like, everything's fine. No big deal. You just, you know, want to go stop in. Like, it's like, oh, no big deal that, like, you need to go to the hospital. So I'm like, what the heck are we doing here? But then, of course, because my dad is recovering from major surgery and he has some things still he's in recovery, right? So he still has certain things going on. They're like, well, we're going to have to admit him for the night. So my poor dad, after having been in the hospital for 17 days, first week home, very loopy. And then second week, we're like doing better. And then third week, I'm like, yeah, third week's going to be great. And literally that Monday, all this nonsense happens. And they're like, yeah, we're going to have to keep him just to make sure that he's okay. I was like, oh no, my dad was like so bummed out. That's the polite way to put it. I don't curse. My dad does curse. And I was like, Dad, be nice to these nurses, okay? Because it's not their fault. Anyway, I go home because after a while, it's like I was with my dad all day long. I come home. I'm just so frustrated. And I can't even tell you how frustrated I already was from the week before. So let me fill you in on what was going on the week before. One of the medications that my father is on is really extreme. He's supposed to have blood taken every week. They need to make sure that the dosage is correct, and it can change from week to week depending on the lab results from his blood being drawn. And the first time he had his blood drawn, they didn't let me know anything. They finally called his doctor's office, and by the time that they got these lab results in, they were like, oh, take him off of it, don't have him on it. And I was like, okay. And they're like, we're going to send somebody else out because we kind of waited too long. Like, they took too long to get the lab results back. So we're going to have somebody else come out. They're going to take your dad's blood again, and we're going to do it again, and then we're going to get back to you. This was essentially the next day. They're like, we're going to get back to you right away so you know if he should be put back on it. And I was like, great. Nobody called me. Nobody calls me back. So I'm like, I'm not going to put him on this medication based off of the numbers that they had told me. And they had told me, like, hold it. Don't put him on it for now. And then they never got back to me. And I'm like, I'm not going to give him this medicine again when you very quickly were like, take him off of it. Don't put him on it anymore. So I'm already frustrated about that because it's not that hard for somebody to just call me back and let me know. So then it's the weekend. We tried to call them back because this had happened on a Friday. Over the weekend, we tried to call and it's all automated. And they're like, our hours on Monday through Friday. And I was like, He has a follow-up appointment on Monday. I'll ask then. So that happens, right? Here's another thing that's going on. My dad does not have internet at his house. He's very old-fashioned. It's endearing. But also now that we're living with him, we kind of need internet, right? So we don't have to have internet. It's just a convenience. It's a luxury. So we had called, and you know what? I'm going to totally name drop because it was the most unprofessional thing I've ever seen. CenturyLink. CenturyLink was supposed to come out and get our internet set up for us. This being after they'd already canceled on us. We had made an appointment and they called and they're like, sorry, we can't come out. And I'm like, what? What big corporation just randomly cancels on your appointment? I thought that was bizarre, but I'm like, all right, fine. So they come out. The guy's like, oh, there's like boxes in all your neighbors' yards, and I need 10 of them to all connect, so I gotta go knock on your neighbor's door. And we're like, okay. And then they knock on the neighbor's door, and they're like, oh yeah, nobody was answering, so like, I'm just gonna go do some other calls, and then I'll come back. And we're like, okay. And then in the meantime, he had taken this thing off in my dad's yard and had left all these wires exposed, and he didn't tell us that he'd done that. And then later I walk out and I see all these wires exposed and my dog is playing with the plastic stuff, and I was like, what the heck? And he never called, he never came back, and I was like, what the heck is this? I was furious. And also, this was after they'd already canceled. So I was like, this is so unprofessional. And I'm flipping out because I'm already frustrated that I didn't get a call back about my dad's blood. And then these people don't come back or call me back. And they said they were going to get us internet that day. This is not just like we got to come out and see the situation. It's not something like, it's not an assessment. They were supposed to install internet and they're like, I can't connect the boxes. Basically, I can't do my job. The one service I'm supposed to provide for you that you're paying for. They're charging us. So can you tell I have some bent up rage? Oh my gosh. I am telling my lovely husband, Sean, I'm like, I do not like this. I want to get a different service. And he was like, well, they're probably going to send somebody back out. And by the time they send someone back out, it would probably still be sooner than to call another company and get service through someone else. And I was like, okay. And then the next day, guys, I was so close to letting my dog out on a Doordash driver. I was so mad. So my dad, he's lost his appetite. He's hardly been eating, and he got a craving for something that I'm like, great, Dad, I'm going to Doordash it. We're going to get it for you. So I order this food. The Doordasher shows up, and granted, you know, I paid a decent amount of money for this delivery, and the guy shows up, and he's missing 2 of our items. He gave us the receipt, and there's like a $16 difference between the receipt from the place and what I paid through the Doordash app. And I was like, what the heck? And my husband like went back out and very nicely was like, oh, hey, we're just missing a couple things. And the guy was like, oh, they must have forgot them. I'll go back. And I'm like, they didn't forget them. Sometimes Doordash, it seems like certain places, they print off your order, then they give it to the driver. Other places, the driver has to then put in your order. And I'm looking at the receipt and I'm like, he just didn't order what I ordered. And so I'm like, they didn't forget anything. So anyway, he comes back with one of our items, not both of the missing items. And I'm like, what the heck? And I'm already like stomping around the house like an idiot. So I'm just like, that guy. And my husband's like, I'll go talk to him. And he's like, oh, we're still missing this. And then he was like, you'll have to call them. So we called them. We're like, hey, we also had this. And they're like, okay. And then he like very obviously annoyed because he speeds away very dramatically to go get the rest of the stuff and I don't even care that much, but I'm like already really mad. He comes back with nothing. The next time he comes back, he was like, oh, they said that you had called and said everything was good. And now my husband is getting annoyed. And I don't know if you guys have watched any of the videos with my husband. He's a very calm fella. But he was like, no, that's not what happened. And he's like, that's what they said. And then my husband was like, no. And the guy's like, well, I'll show you your order. You didn't have it on your order. And then he's like, oh, I guess the order's already gone. And my husband's like, it's on my wife's phone. I'll show you. Sean shows him on my phone exactly what the order said, showed him the missing item. And the guy's like, you're going to have to call them again. And my husband was like, if it was your mistake, why do I have to call? And the guy's like, you just have to call them. I'm just like, what the heck? Anyway, I told my husband, I'm like, you know what I want to do? I want to go out there the last time and I want to bring my dog. And I want to be like, excuse me, why exactly did it take you this many times to get us our stuff? I was just so mad and I wanted my dog there with me because I'm short and I know I'm weak, but I'm like, my dog is big and she'll protect me and I want her to intimidate this guy. I was just like turning into an idiot. So it's a good thing I stayed in the house. Anyway, so this was everything that was leading up to that stupid doctor's appointment. So everything that happened that Monday, I was just so mad and I felt so bad for my dad because the whole day, my dad is understandably upset about the whole having to stay in the hospital and not knowing what's going on. And he's just obviously frustrated. And so I'm trying to stay calm because this is about him. This isn't about me and all my bent up rage. This is his opportunity to be upset. And so I'm just there with him and I'm kind of like, just kind of leaning in the chair, whatever. I'm just with him all day. I get home and then I vented to Shauna, my poor friend. I sent her so many Boxer messages and I'm driving and I'm just like, because you can push the button so that you then don't have to hold the phone, right? It's dangerous. So I have it pushed and I'm driving and I'm just like, oh my gosh, these stupid doctors and this is after all this. And I'm going off and then somebody cuts me off and I'm like, get the hell out! And I'm just raging in the app at my friend. And she's like, it's okay, you can rage all you want. She's a good friend. To my relief, my father got to come home the very next day and I was expecting him to be so grumpy and frustrated, and he was in such a good mood. And I was like, what's going on? And then I was like, I guess he's just so happy that he gets to come home. And then the few days after that were the best we've had since he'd come home from the hospital. And I was like, oh yes, things are looking up. That was last week. And then this week, he's slowly been regressing. He's not doing as well as he was when he first came home from that last hospital visit. And I've been taking note of quite a few things. I'm pretty sure I know what the problem is, but we have an appointment on Thursday, which is today, the day that I'm filming this. And I was very ready to relay all the information to the doctor. But pretty much as soon as we came in, she was like, you are breathing really heavy to my dad. And he's like, uh-huh. And she's like, I don't think that's good. And then she listened to his lungs and she's like, I gotta call the EMTs and you're going to the hospital. I can't let you go home. And I was pretty sure that was gonna be the situation. So my dad's back in the hospital. I actually just posted a TBR that I had pre-recorded from when it was the day my dad was going to be coming home from the hospital. So it's funny because I just filmed that and then this is going to go up and this is what's been going on since I filmed that video. So that's what's been up with me. As a kid, I was worried all the time because my parents are split up, if that's not obvious. And I've always known my parents split up when I was 10. From a very early age, I was very aware of the fact that my father was much older than most other kids my age. And I just had this very morbid, thought process about the fact that since my parents were split up, I got to see my dad every other weekend. And I was like, my time with my dad is not only limited because I don't get to see him literally very much based off of the fact that my parents are split up, but also because he's older. He's older. He was older than some of the other kids' grandparents that I went to school with. And so from a very early age, I developed kind of an irrational fear that something was going to happen because my dad was living alone now. And he was always been very capable, but pretty much since the age of 10, I was constantly worried. I would call my dad every day And if I called and he didn't pick up, I'm like, oh, he's probably just outside watering his plants. And if I'd called back later and he still didn't answer, I'm like, where is dad? And my dad is so old-fashioned. Not only does he not have internet, he doesn't have a cell phone. So if he doesn't answer his home phone, I'm like, where is dad? And once I got older, I would, if something like this would happen, once I was able to drive, if my dad didn't answer in the morning, and if I called later and he didn't answer, if I called later, he didn't answer, I'm like, something happened to dad. And I would drive all the way out, which he didn't live that close to my mom's house. I lived with my mom during college and whatnot. So I would drive all the way out to my dad's house, and then I'd get there and he'd be like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, why didn't you answer your phone? He's like, I guess my phone's not working. And I was like, ah. Very early on, I was very paranoid. And I was also a very depressed child. I still get depressed as an adult, and it's taken a long time to realize that because my childhood had a lot of other things going on, and I used to think that being depressed was a result of my childhood. So when I got older and I was depressed, I had a hard time. When I get depressed, it was difficult for me to recognize that that's what that was, because in my mind, I'm like, my life's pretty good. Like, this can't possibly be depression, but I get depressed, right? Anyway, in my childhood, I was very paranoid. I was very depressed. I had a lot of other things at home that were very difficult for me. So I loved my dad dearly. And just, I was just kind of very nervous all the time inside. I was a very quiet kid. I didn't have tons of friends because a lot of times when kids, they invite you to birthday parties or to come hang out or whatever. And if it was a weekend, I was going to see my dad, I would decline because I'm like, no offense to all these other people, but I was like, I'm not probably going to see these people again after high school. Once we all go to college, we're all going to go our separate ways. My dad is always going to be my dad. And after a while, when you constantly decline, people stop asking. I would go a lot. I had not the best childhood. I had a lot of reasons why I wasn't very social as a kid, but I always had my dad. And having gone through being constantly worried and paranoid and nervous as a kid, I learned to handle these sorts of things, I think, pretty well. I've learned how to keep myself busy to not become extremely down and fearful and overwhelmed and just worried. I'm pretty good about that. So if you watch any of my videos and I still seem cheery and happy, it's not because everything is perfect. It's because maybe it's not even healthy. I don't know. But I've learned, I don't even want to say I've learned how to process my anxiety or anything like that. I discovered, logically that worrying doesn't change anything. But I spent years of my life worried all the time that you can't help it. You still get worried, but I'm quite good. I think pretty good at still remaining positive and not letting myself become overwhelmed with worry. So I guess I just wanted to, I guess I just needed to chat. I feel like you guys have gotten a little taste of what poor Joshana and poor Sean, my husband, have to sometimes listen to, because when I get in rant mode, it's very difficult to shut me up. Moving forward, though, I don't know what my video schedule is going to be like. I know nobody cares. I know there's so many more important things going on in the world right now, so I don't even care that nobody cares. I like communication. I wanted to try and fill you guys in a little bit as to what's going on, why every now and then you're going to see days without a video, or maybe if I have a video go up and I don't answer any comments, and I don't answer any comments for a while, this is probably part of the reason why I just have more important things going on. I have rambled for so long and I'm getting so sweaty and hot that I'm gonna cut myself off now. I had to change into shorts before I started filming and now my butt's sweaty. This poor chair. I hope that whatever is going on in your life, I hope that it's not, stressful in any way. I hope that your quarantine has been filled with lots of reading, watching fun videos, and eating yummy food and having food delivered, whatever your situation is. I hope that it's positive, and if it's not, just know there's other people out there that it's, I don't know if it really makes you feel better to know that, like, oh, my dad is, like, all going to the hospital all the time. But just, we're all going through stuff. So I hope you're all doing well. I hope everything is great for everybody else. And I'll see you guys later. Bye.